like to start out our groundbreaking ceremony with a prayer. So let's bow. Father, we just thank you so much for leading us here, for everything that you've done for us, Lord, and bringing us to a point where we can do this. And we just pray that you be with this whole process and this whole project. We just pray that you offer your protection on it, Father, and just help us, Lord, as we go through the construction process and everything to make things good, Father. But most importantly, we just pray that you continue to use this as a way of blessing this ministry and blessing the ministry in that we can work out and reach out for other people and take care of them when they're here for Maya. We just pray that you continue to bless us and protect us in all this, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. For our first person who's going to be coming up here, we're going to introduce Gary Byram. He's been a longtime member of the board of directors of the Hands of Compassion and one of the busiest guys I know. He's on 3 different boards. And the truth is, Gary has put many, many hours into this project. And also, he's working with every single person in here. And so let's give Gary a round of applause.
And just a word for the speakers coming after me, just come up the stairs slowly. The ground rocks a little bit. So as Philip said, I'm Gary Byram. I'm from western suburbs of Chicago, but have been involved with the HOC for longer than I want to remember. And I got brought in, there's going to be a little bit of history in a few minutes, and I got brought in by one of the kind of early founders to be part of the board, and then kind of get involved and just kept going. So we want to thank everyone for being here. It's a special time for us. This was envisioned years ago in terms of where we're going, and so we really appreciate you being here as we kind of celebrate together for what's happening. The ground where you're sitting is going to disappear very shortly. David's going to tell us when, but it's basically actually going to disappear over there. But this is 836 West Center. That's 840 and that's 830. And as of Mark, a couple of days ago, this is all 840. So this whole combined lot is 840, which took a little bit to get through and get that set up. But Hands of Compassion started as really a personal kind of Christian-driven, compassionate service for patients who were calling, looking for help and a place to stay when they were making their journey to Mayo. And people started taking it on individually, hosting people in their homes, and then eventually that kind of sense of compassion led some of the people from the church, some others from Naperville, etc., to actually get together and decide to buy 830. And literally hire a chaplain, hire a house parent, and literally kind of open up the Hands of Compassion as a more structured kind of formal ministry. And it's been, running ever since then. So the 2 speakers that are going to come up next, they are going to give you a little bit of the history and how we went from starting in homes to basically buying 830 and then building 840 with the plan to come across. And then when Teresa comes up, the architect, she was the architect for 840 as well, and then has had the fun of figuring out how we're going to extend it all the way across and expand this. So I'll come back up a little bit later. We are very excited about the opportunity, what it means for our ability to serve Mayo patients as they come into town. And there are kind of 3 aspects that we've always focused on in ministry. One, you'll notice if you're from Rochester, we are literally within walking distance of both facilities, major facilities, which makes it really easy if the weather's not 20 below to actually walk over and get outside and get a little bit of sunshine even in the middle of the winter. With the chaplain and the house parents, we also add kind of the emotional and spiritual support, and then we encourage the guests to all connect together and form their own support group as well. So those are kind of 3 of the critical dimensions that we've really built around and tried to maintain. So with that, I'm going to let Teresa come up, and she'll tell you a little bit about what she, well, Philip's going to come up first.
And actually, Teresa's not ready yet either.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jumping ahead, Steve.
We're just jumping ahead. But as Gary said a little bit ago, I'm about to introduce a couple of guys who have pretty much grown up around this ministry. Would you agree with that, Jim? I know Steve has. And we'll talk about them in a little bit. But there's one story I wanted to read to you guys. This last week, we have been having a fundraiser recently for our 40th anniversary. And a woman last week sent an email along with a donation. And she wanted me to share this email because it shared with her what the HOC ministry has meant throughout the years. And so she says, I want to tell you a moment. Her name is Susan Young. She says, I wanted to take a moment to tell you what the Hands of Compassion ministry means to me. In 2009, my son was referred to the Mayo Clinic for a very delicate and complicated abdominal surgery. Because he was too ill to make a trip to Rochester alone, I accompanied him. My husband suffered from severe heart disease and his doctors advised him not to fly. So he remains at home in Washington State. After arriving at the Mayo Clinic, the doctors examined my son and determined he was not physically ready for the surgery he needed, so they sent us back to home for another 3 weeks. I was graciously told there would be a room waiting for me at HOC when he returned for his scheduled surgery on May 9th. My husband and I spoke on the phone almost hourly that day so that I could provide updates on our son, but there was something in his voice that day that seemed strange to me. Finally, he told me that he did not want to add to my burden, but that he was in the hospital himself that day because the doctors thought he had had a silent heart attack the night before and wanted to perform an angiogram just to be sure. He told me not to worry because he had many angiograms before, and then he said he would have to go because they were ready to take him into surgery. Then his doctor took the phone and reassured me that all would be well. About an hour later, as they were wheeling my son into his room after a successful surgery, my phone rang. It was my husband's doctor. All I remember were her words, "We lost him." And I began to scream. Just like that, my beloved husband was gone. My son's post-surgical recovery would take another 2 weeks, so my best friend flew out to Rochester to be with me. She too was given a private room at HOC, and what a blessing that was. The following Sunday, she and I attended worship service at the Rochester Church of Christ. As we walked in, the minister came to where we were seated, knelt down in front of us, and the entire congregation prayed with us. What a blessing that was. Every day there were people available at HOC to pray with us, and members of the church who came to my son's room to comfort us. What a blessing that was. Folks continued even today to ask me how I made it through those trying days, and I simply say one day at a time. As I look back over my 75 years of life, I see more clearly how God has been there every step of the way when I needed Him most. Psalm 55:22 says, "Cast your burden on the Lord and He will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved." This scripture is an invitation to give my worries and anxieties to God. It's about placing my trust in Him, knowing that He is strong enough to bear my burdens. It is a promise from God that He will provide for me, both material and spiritually, and that He will be my source of strength and comfort during difficult times. In essence, it is a verse of encouragement and reassurances, urging me to rely on God's power and protection even when faced with life's most difficult challenges. I don't know why I couldn't physically be with my husband on the day he died, but I do know that God was there with me and my son that day, both materially and spiritually through the ministry of the House of Compassion. May God continue to bless you in the wonderful work you are doing in the name of the Lord. After that story, I felt like that was an important thing to share before we get into the history of this ministry, because it shares what this ministry has been like. I have personally witnessed Steve do the same thing at the Rochester Church of Christ, where he calls somebody up and we would all surround these people and pray with them. The ministry of this is more than just a physical hotel room. It's about connecting with people in a very deeply spiritually and godly way. And it's been one of the biggest blessings in my life being a part of this ministry. I'm so thankful that I'm here. The two people that I'm about to introduce to you to come up are Jim Smeltzer and Steve Willis. Steve grew up in this ministry the way nobody else probably did that's here today. And I'm not going to tell you that story because I'm sure that's what he's going to tell you. But his parents were literally instrumental in beginning this ministry and also carrying it on for a long period of time. Jim Smeltzer, his father Jerry was on the board of directors, and he has continued that role by coming in when his father couldn't anymore. And so these guys have pretty much grown up around this ministry, and so we are so thankful to invite them up here to talk about the history of the House of Compassion.
Thank you for sharing that story, Philip. That was very powerful. So, as Philip said, my name's Steve Willis. I grew up in Rochester, in the Rochester Church of Christ here back in the 60s and 70s before I went away to college. And I just wanted to share some of the memories that I have, which pretty much are prior to us buying the 830 house. Most of them come from the early 70s and 80s, and as Philip said, my mom and dad, Jerry and Gladys Willis, were a big part of establishing what became HOC. Both my mom and dad, I remember, worked full-time. My dad worked for the Mayo Clinic for 12 years, and then he left there and went to IBM and retired from there after 24 years. My mom worked for the American Board of Radiology, and she retired after 30 years there. During this time, I remember it was normal for us to be keeping guests in our home, and we did that on a regular basis. That was just something that they enjoyed doing, ministering to people. That was them. And for those of us that are older, you probably remember what the world was like back then. It was a different world than what it is today. Back then, when you kept people in your home, you did a lot of the things for the people. In fact, I can remember that we didn't go out to eat very much at all, even as a family. My mom would typically fix the evening meal for people, at least through the week, and on the weekends if they were still there. Kind of the highlight I remember was going out as a family to Henry's Hamburgers for 19-cent hamburgers, I think their sign said. And other than that, we didn't go out to eat a whole lot. But we had a hide-a-bed in the basement where the guests would stay, and so there was a little bit of a separation between the upstairs and the downstairs of the house. But at the same time, I would say that a large portion of my mom and dad's time was spent ministering to the people that they were taking care of, plus the normal household chores that had to be done along with keeping the house. My dad did a lot of shuttling of people back and forth to the Mayo Clinic, getting them to their appointments, visiting them when they were in the hospital, and just doing basically whatever was needed to be done. One thing that I was asked to talk about is how did the house come about? And I thought about that, and I think there were really a couple of reasons how the house came about and why the ministry was started. But I think the primary one was there were a limited number of couples at the Rochester Church that were able to keep people, and names like the Gilruths, the McMillans are two couples that I remember that were a part of that. But the main driver, I think, was that they realized that if they could buy a house where they could minister to people and keep a larger group of people, they'd be able to serve more people, and that was the whole intent of buying the 830 house. So once the house was purchased, there was a lady whose name was Boots Young, and she was recruited as a first house parent. My mom and dad had known her and her husband Walt from previous Mayo visits that Walt had come for, and thought that she'd be a great fit as a house parent, which turned out to be true. I think I'm remembering right when I say that my dad went to Ohio where Boots was living. Walt had already passed away, and visited with her and tried to get her to sign up for becoming the house parent, which thankfully she did, and that turned out to be a big blessing. I don't know all the details about how the 830 house was acquired. By that time I was gone. It was 1985 when the house was purchased. But the church made the decision to kick off HOC. The house was selected and the funds were raised so that the house could be purchased. I remember though that it was an ongoing project when the house was purchased, because at first there was a lot of repair work that needed to be done, things needed to be replaced, and there was upgrades that needed to be done to it. And so I know my dad and another fellow, Don Angus, who was a member of the Rochester Church, spent countless hours there working on things, making sure that they were taken care of and fixed correctly. My mom kept the books, the accounting books, for many years when they were living here in Rochester. They did move to Iowa in 1998 to be with me, but my dad was a board member from the start, and then he continued on as a board member until he was no longer able to do that. I think too that he was responsible for coming up with names for other potential board members when this was all first put together, because he'd been on the board of York College for many years and he had a lot of contacts, so we knew people to get a hold of and ask them if they'd be willing to do that. One of the things that meant the most to them was when Chuck Hazama, who was the mayor of Rochester in 1991, proclaimed July 25th Jerry and Gladys Willis Day. There was actually a plaque that was made in their honor, and they have that proudly hung on their wall. Also an article that was in the Post Bulletin, and that was also framed and put on their wall. They displayed that in the den of their house, and then when they moved to Iowa, they put it on the wall down there as well. So I know that if they were able to be here with us today, they would both be very pleased to join us and to see, because I highly imagine that they never would have guessed that we're at the point where we are with getting ready to build a third house. So again, I want to welcome you here. I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedules to come and to be a part of us.
Thank you, Steve. That was a wonderful summary. So, my name is Jim Smelser. I'm here in honor of my dad, primarily, and just want to say it's an honor and a privilege to serve with this amazing organization, the Hands of Compassion. It just means so much to me and my family. And I just want to say thank you to Gary for his amazing leadership for us as a board and giving us direction. And he has spent countless hours doing this. And I also want to pay homage to Jerry and Gladys, because so my wife and I were newly married, and I ended up doing my residency here at Mayo in 1990. And we were here, and I did my fellowship here as well. So we were here from 1990 to 1995. And those were very formative years for us. We had two of our children while we were here. We were a long way from home. We were from Tennessee and Alabama. And this was really different in so many ways. But Jerry and Gladys were our surrogate parents, and later became surrogate grandparents to our children, and just mean so much to us. I think they were probably the sweetest couple I've ever met, honestly. And their legacy lives on through Steve and his contributions to the board. So, before we got here, as Steve mentioned, Boots relocated here. She was newly widowed, but God had uniquely qualified her for this role. Boots went through more trials and tribulations than anybody should have to go through. So she knew how to deal with people, with hurting people. Boots had kind of what I'd call tough love, but she was a lady of kindness and love for hurting people. Boots was a great cook, well known for her pies, which were a staple of Friday night board meetings. And Karen and I had many a Thanksgiving dinner because we couldn't go home. And we had Thanksgiving dinners in this house. We had potlucks at church. and Boots was an amazing lady. Boots was also known because she put out somewhere around 300 cards and letters a week. So she was known by the mail carriers. In fact, she was so well known, they didn't deliver the mail to the street, they brought it to the house. So regardless of the season and the weather, they came up to the house, exchanged for all her cards and everything, and checked on her. Boots was just such a powerful influence for this community and really for the world. While we were here, Don and Kathy McMillan came here and were great influences also on our family. Don was initially in the pulpit and later more so involved in Hands of Compassion. And he called me a couple of years after we left, so this was the late 90s, asked me if I could be on the board, and we had 3 young children and a long way from here, and I just said, I just can't do it. But I think my dad could maybe do that. And Dad also was pretty uniquely qualified. He was a project manager for NASA, and so he had experience managing and building and that sort of thing. And Dad was able to serve on this board for about 20 years until his health failed, and then I've been blessed to kind of try to step into his very large shoes since that time. In 2004, this property became available that was adjacent to 830, and there were kind of apartment buildings as I understand here, and I don't remember that exactly, but they were pretty dilapidated, and God had orchestrated this, that they were trying to move these apartments. It was kind of a bargain, and Don was able with others with the board to purchase this property with a vision, and they ultimately tore down both apartment buildings one at a time, I think. So, and then Dad with Gary and others and with Teresa designed and built 840 as we know it, finishing about 2006 as I understand. So this has been 19 to 20 years in service, both of these together now. Deborah was the original house parent, and there have been many other house parents since that time. Most recently Gary and Joanne, and they are with us today, which we are grateful that they're with us. Somehow somebody coaxed them to move from Gulf Shores, Alabama on the coast to Rochester, Minnesota to serve here. And Mike and Sheila are currently, Sheila's with us. Mike I don't think is feeling well, but they're our current house parents. By the way, we're recruiting for house parent or parents. If you know of anybody, this is now one of the top 20 places to retire in the country, Rochester, Minnesota. I don't think Mayor Norton would mind me telling you that. So if you know of anybody, we are looking and recruiting and praying that God leads us to the right people. And I also want to mention the chaplains that have served. Originally, Bud Hammonds was here. When we were here, he was kind of part-time role in that, and Don served in that part-time. And then Stacy Sykes came on in 1998, I think he told me, in a full-time role. He was the first full-time chaplain until 2014, and then Philip's been with us since that time. These are humble servants who love people and have been quite an asset to this. And I want to just conclude with one of my favorite Bible phrases, which is a phrase you see that says, seeing what is ahead. And I think that's a great quality of leadership, is to be able to see what's ahead. What a unique skill. And I think the vision that Jerry and Gladys and the McMillans and the board and others have had of what this would become, when this was built, they dreamed of a day when we would build on this property and connect the two. And that vision is becoming reality today as we sit here and moving through the rest of this year. And God has blessed this ministry and blessed so many others, and we are just so excited to see what God is going to do through this third house in the Hands of Compassion.
I actually jumped ahead of my second set of comments. Ms. Teresa is after me. And Philip will come up and introduce Teresa as well, although by now I think everybody figured out who Teresa is. We have kind of been back and forth over time, and we started doing planning and had an architect involved that actually was at church with us in Naperville. So we've got 3 board members out of Naperville that are on the board as well. But we started working and kind of thinking about what the future direction would look like, and we we built 840, we had this lot, and we knew at some point we were going to build on it, and there were some kind of constraints in terms of what we could do and how we could do it, et cetera, from when this was originally built. And so we started kind of putting a set of plans together, and we were doing all that pre something that happened in 2020. So we had a lot of work, that had gone into it, and we basically kind of stopped and held off, which was a good thing that we did. So was that our wisdom or somebody else's? But we ended up learning a lot going through the last 5 years, going through COVID, learning things about ways to control kind of air systems and HVACs and flows and everything else, as well as the fact that we were going through a transition in terms of how Mayo was working and what their schedule was, because we have to match, to kind of their flow, because we're working with their patients and supporting them as guests, and we're doing the patients and a family caregiver is our general model. Sometimes it'll be two, et cetera. So through kind of all those challenges, we had a lot of experiences and learnings that basically helped us when we kind of said, okay, we're ready to restart. Things had reopened, volume had come back up. We were now kind of had a waiting list booked out several weeks in advance. And the flow had changed, because instead of patients coming in on Sunday night and checking in, now they come in on Sunday night for Monday morning appointments and Tuesday night for Wednesday appointments, and Friday or Thursday or Friday for Friday, Saturday appointments. Well, that changes a lot of things you have to deal with. And so as we were going through all that, we were able to sit down and really incorporate some significant changes into the design. In addition, Rochester regulations had changed. And so as opposed to this being a separate house connected with a walkway, we were actually able to do our original plan, which is that wall will go largely away, not all of it, but a chunk of it, and it will be a single facility, single house, which gives us lots of opportunity, and it created a lot of flexibility. So we actually have space in the house now that can accommodate a family. We can connect rooms. We can basically host people who are going to be here, because Mayo is keeping more and more people for longer periods of time. And we were originally set up and designed, particularly with H830, where people would come in on Sunday night and leave by Thursday or Friday. That wasn't the model anymore. So we have a lot of flexibility in the new design to actually be able to reconfigure rooms and move people around depending on needs, and keep people for longer periods of time. So it's allowed us to do a lot of things that we would not have been able to do before. Teresa will talk a little bit about the design. We are tremendously excited about the expansion, not just because we will have more rooms and be able to host more people. This ministry, Philip read one email, but the cards, notes, letters, emails we have of the people, the thousands of people that this house has hosted over the years is pretty phenomenal. And the impact, and we have people that stay in church, in touch. We have people that basically form connections when they're here with the other guests, who are still connected to each other 20 years later. And so there's a lot of kind of encouragement, support, sitting with people as they're going through, an existential crisis of, am I going to live or not live, or my spouse, or, how's this going to turn out, or what's the message that we're hearing? And basically that's what the house is all about. The house is about being there for people at a critical point in their life and helping them through that process, and encouraging and supporting and praying, and having offering spiritual support as well. So be excited about it. We're all going to be excited to watch it go up, and hope it all goes well. And I know Dave is counting on that as well. So there will be hiccups. I'm sure we'll work through things, but we are ready to break ground as soon as we can and get this started. So I'm going to let Phil come back up and introduce Teresa.
So we're glad to have Teresa here. She has been, we first met, it was about a year ago now, wasn't it? It's kind of crazy how long it's been. But she's been At the center of this design, these beautiful pictures that you see up here and the layout of everything that you see here, we really appreciate the design she's doing. She works with the CRW architecture firm, and she also was a designer on this house next to us as well. And so we are very thankful for Teresa to come up, and she's going to be sharing with you, the vision of how this is going to look here. So.
Who's right about that stuff? So it takes a whole world and a community to do this, and I feel honored to be up here. I honestly wasn't ready to speak, but I would also like to thank Ryan Bakke, who was an architect who worked with the committee and was the friend from the church. And he did a lot of good groundwork of getting people organized about what they really wanted in a building and what their goals were and priorities were, kind of kept it down to a scope that was achievable. And so he graciously shared the design with me and worked through where we could start. And then with, as you mentioned, the changes in Rochester's rules about how we want to promote these core neighborhoods, that allowed us to come and join the lots and build a house that was right-sized for this project and for this mission. Also, I want to thank Jeff Giese. He's a structural engineer who works locally. He's been instrumental in helping us tie the structures together and get a plan. Mark Haselius is out here. He helped us get all of the civil and title work done and to get the land together. And people may not know, but this street is not where it used to be, and there's a lot of things that happen there. All the little things underground that have to happen. Connor Burke, our civil engineer, helped us get all the utilities back to the house so that we could have fire suppression, water, and sewer. And Emma Sonneborg is here with me. She's been working with the staff, working on the interior pieces to make sure that we've got resilient finishes and all of the right ADA components. And Andrew, of course, in our office, who is the day-to-day go-to. So thanks for bearing with me, because it's a big team. It's not one person. Anyway, sometimes I just get to be the band director. I'm going to grab one of these. Okay, so you can see this is the existing house that you have right there. And right here where the porch is where we are going to join and come in with this additional house. And the new structure is more in scale with the original house. So this will fit in with the neighborhood. We've kind of scaled it and worked with it in 3D so that we made sure we were coming up with details like the houses you see down the street around the corner. Kept the inviting front porch across the front so it has that home feeling and the approachability. Okay. Didn't want to trip over that.
It's in order, first, second, third.
Yeah, I was getting myself tight. Vanna? I love Phil. Anyway, so this is the existing house as it sits, and we are doing a major remodeling for the kitchen and dining area, the core areas where the families meet, and having that sense of community is so important to people when they're under strife and in that healing process. And so this is very important. Across the front, we have a great room for the families, a closet for games, we have a public restroom, we have an office for the chaplain to conference with people or have private meetings. And on that first floor, we have the elevator. We have an entrance from the back that's completely accessible so people can get in out of the rain. We also have an access from the front porch. And this became a commercial building because of the nature of the size. We tried to hide that aspect, but we do have 2 exit stairs, 2 exit ways. We have a full service elevator, and then on the first floor we have 2 guest suites. And for the most part, the guest suites are accessible. We went to full accessibility with the main floor. we go to the second floor and we tie into the existing house there. Go Sweet Stay. We have a nice little conversation space up above the porch, so people on the second floor can have a little game room, maybe have some puzzles laid out on the table. You know, a little bit of interaction and pastime as people have time to think and wait. We've got 2 guest units here. These can be joined. We have doors between the front guest units, so if you have an extended family, they could actually kind of have a family-style joint room. And then we have 2 more guest units. And on the upper floor, this is more apartment style. This will accommodate a longer stay. We have a kitchenette with this guest unit A and B, but those can be joined, but they also have a small kitchenette. And that's also for somebody who has a immune situation that they really need to be up and away. And then we have a place for the house parents on that top floor as well. And they have a nice apartment, and they're connected to the elevator and the main stair. So it's a very simple building. There's another rendering up there, and if you have questions later, I'll be around. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be a part of this.
Thank you, Teresa. Our next speaker has been a guy I met probably around 2015. It's been a good 10 years. Figure this out here. All right. So Dave Reynolds is a guy of great character. I love him to death for that. He has been the troop master for my son's Trail Life troop, but also he is just a genuinely good man. We had to remodel an apartment a few years ago for some house parents because we had because they needed more space in order to be able to operate and do what they needed to do. And Dave was massively involved in that project and just wonderful to guests when he would come in. So I am really excited to invite Dave up here and he was going to talk about the contracting, the building, and how this might impact the neighborhood and things of that nature. And so I want to welcome Dave to come up here.
All right, thank you for that. It's a pleasure to be here, honestly. It's an honor to be part of this project. Before I jump on the schedule, I just can't help but take note of how amazing this ministry is. It's overwhelming when you think about these meetings I've seen really going back to 2017. It's the first time I talked to some people about this from your board, and those same people are still involved, you know, years later. And it wasn't, those challenges were not because they were twiddling their thumbs. There was a lot of effort. But when you look at, like has been said, you know, what is God doing here? To me, that's what I see. I can't help, as I've been thinking about you guys, you know, Matthew 25 really comes to mind. You know, when Jesus is speaking about helping the stranger, that's the real faith evidence of knowing Christ would be meeting the stranger. He knew you. He knows those followers who are actually helping others. And so when I think about you guys, that's what comes to mind, honestly. When I was driving, I'm like, man, they're Matthew 25 ministry here. That's what they're doing. So it really is awesome to see. There's just this little church over here, Church of Christ. And I mean, I've been there for meetings, and I've known I've known a lot of Quellies in my life, believe it or not. But it's just this little church. And this denomination of people that are from all over the country that are loosely affiliated, from what it sounds like, from that denomination. And somehow they're putting all this effort in here. So it's almost hard to be involved as somebody who gets paid, just because it's like, man, what are you guys doing here? You know, all this effort is being given. So I just want to commend you that, just as a Christian, to see other Christians in a having a large impact, like you said, with thousands of people over the years. It's really cool. I mean, I don't know how many times my wife can attest. Every time I'd come back from a meeting with you guys, I'd be like, man, these guys are awesome. Because sometimes I'm just with other work meetings that are stressful all the time, and I come to this meeting, and there's just that heart, and that's God working in you guys. I recognize, but just thank you for the history, going back. It's just awesome, and so it's cool to see 10 more rooms that are going to be available. I mean, that's a lot, and just wow, it's awesome. So, anyways, contracting. So this project, we're looking at starting here. I was hoping to start the 9th, but it's really going to be, we're going to be digging for real. The week of the 16th is the plan of June. There are a couple things still going on, like getting the permit in my hands, which is, we're right there, and getting the land. This last other day was one of those last little marks. So it's encouraging to see that. It is all just kind of coming into play right when we need to, so that's good. We've been moving forward as if that was going to happen either way. But yeah, you'll see temporary fence be set up here the week of the 9th. There will be, just so you guys know, gas line is moving that week. Getting in preparation for that. So it will be kind of closed off, gated off throughout the project. It's just easier from a security standpoint and especially safety. So you'll see, I mean, we're dealing with 3 levels above grade here. So different points of scaffolding and lift driving around and whatnot. So that's my main concern on the project, probably, is safety and street traffic. We will be, with Public Works, taking over some of these parking spots that are out here during the project. I know we've talked about just how the house probably isn't going to be used much for a couple months, and kind of the hardest part of the project where we're digging foundation, getting this thing popped up. We are using panelization, so you will see it go up pretty quick, which will be nice once we get started. So I mean, really, June, July, digging foundations, hoping to start building mid-July, and by the end of August it'll be roof on. All the windows will be in. We'll be doing rough-ins. We'll be moving down the road pretty quick. So my goal is to be done no later. I want to be done before Thanksgiving. But even before then, it'll start looking substantially completed. A lot of meetings to go, a lot of things to still approve, but everything's like that close, but you got that final signature that's needed on everything. So from a schedule standpoint, if anybody has questions outside of, after this time, feel free to come ask me. There is a schedule that the team will have access to throughout the project. All local contractors for the most part, if you look on that list. It's kind of cool actually to think about just some of the Christian people involved. Mark Azaleas is one of them, and Jeff Giese and Teresa, and just there's a handful of contractors there too, just people I've known a long time, who believe in what you're doing too. So I mean, they're working here, but they believe. So anyhow, I could share a lot more. As I was sitting there, I was realizing, man, this ministry has even affected me, because in my family, my son just yesterday, I was talking to my son Austin, and Chris, who was over here, was a bass fisherman, and when we were here doing some volunteer work with my sons in the basement over here, they had water damage, and he was talking to my son about fishing, and so my son actually stopped working for the most part and was just talking about fishing with Chris for a couple hours, which I was happy to see him talking. I don't really fish, so anyways, Chris was like, hey, let's go fishing, and they would go at like 4:30 in the morning, and he'd take my son fishing. He did it 3 or 4 times, and he talked about faith stuff, and that's what my son just told me. He said, Chris he would never use bait because he doesn't want to hurt God's creatures. So anyways, I'm just looking back, and it's like, man, I've had some fingers in this thing as well, both houses, and I'm excited to be part of it, honestly. So does that cover the bases good enough? All right.
You can tell there's a difference in height between me and you. So we're going to bring up John Poole here. He's from the Rochester Area Chamber of Commerce. So thank you so much for coming.
So I'll keep you up here for 1 second.
You bet.
I'd
Absolutely.
like to present you this certificate recognizing the groundbreaking here today.
Thank you.
So congratulations, and we'll be back again in the fall, early winter, to celebrate the ribbon cutting with you as well. So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And so on behalf of the Chamber, I'm honored to join you all today to celebrate this great occasion on the groundbreaking of Hands of Compassion's second edition here. As we break ground, we don't only celebrate the new building, but we celebrate the mission of Hands of Compassion, who offers not only just a place to stay, but a place that provides comfort, healing, and spiritual support for those who come to our city for Mayo Clinic as they seek treatment with their ailments. On behalf of the Chamber, we thank you for your commitment to serving those who visit our community and appreciate the important work that you and your volunteers do as you minister for patients and their families. Congratulations on this expansion, and we look forward to joining you again to celebrate your ribbon cutting in the fall.
And now I'm excited to introduce our speaker, Mayor Kim Norton. She has been a member of the House of Representatives of the state of Minnesota and been a huge part of what's going on downtown, from what I'm understanding. And so it's an honor to have her here. I was going through her bio, and she's had quite a few accomplishments, as well as mayor of Rochester, Minnesota. But one of the things that stuck out at me the most when I was reading your bio was the fact that you love kayaking and reading. And I was thinking, man, you would get along with my son. So, but we are very proud to have her here and very thankful that she was able to come and be a part of the ceremony. So let's give a big hand for Mayor Norton.
Watching everybody take those stairs, I decided I wasn't going to do this. I'm going to cheat and just come around the back. So thank you so much for the warm introduction, and I'm glad you didn't read the bio that you were given. It really is an honor to be here, and you know, I've learned so much. Our staff did a little bit of research and put together some points, some talking points here. I'm a little loath to read them all because you've already heard so much, and many of you know firsthand what the wonderful work that's done here. But I think this groundbreaking, 40 years of service already, this groundbreaking is going to double the size of the building and its impact on families that come here from all over the world. And folks need often more than a hotel room. You're able to offer compassionate care, family feel, a safe environment, things that our hotels try to do, but because of your ministry and the house parents, if you will, that stay here, it's more than that. It feels like home for folks when they come here at a really difficult time in their lives when they're needing health care. So I want to just say I'm grateful to have met so many of you already today. Very grateful for your heart of ministry and that you're called to do this service. You're called to not only have the original structures, but called to add to them. It's really remarkable. It was a vision. It's now a mission for many of you. I can see that, a mission to create a home for folks. And to hear that thousands of people have come through here already. One of the things that I was struck with is that this started in 1985. In 1985, Rochester was a very different community. In 1985, that's actually before I moved here, this community, I didn't want to look it up in front of anyone, but I was going to try to find out what the population was. I know I came here in '89. The population was somewhere between 60 and 70,000 people. Today we're 127,000 people and growing. So what we want is to continue to have the wonderful growth that we're having, the wonderful expansion that Mayo Clinic's adding to be able to transform healthcare, to provide service for more people, and your ministry and your housing is growing in response to that. Not only is Mayo Clinic growing, and not only is the city of Rochester growing, We also have additions of specialty care, like an addition of a new proton beam center that is still in the process of opening. But again, a specialty care that Rochester and only a few other places in the country offer. And you are going to be able to provide housing and love and care for those people as I said, as Mayo Clinic's population grows, as the city grows, and as you grow. And it's more than just housing, I said, it's hope and healing and hospitality. And, you know, I guess I feel like what you're doing is what I've wanted as mayor for this city, to create an environment of compassion and care all the time for the people. You're providing it for the people who come here, but for the people who live here. It is just, it's been part of why I chose to run for mayor. I want this to be a community that people love and feel safe and warm, and if you talk to people, they will tell you as they walk downtown, people in Rochester always ask me, can I help you find something? That's the kind of community we want to continue to have. That's the kind of warmth and community you're offering to people when they're here. And I want us as a city to continue to offer that as we grow and change. So I think I'm not going to read all the lovely history that the staff pulled together for me, because you know it and you've heard it already. So I'm going to just say, as we break ground today, we're doing more, than turning soil. We're affirming a commitment and a promise that Rochester will continue to be a place of compassion, a place of refuge, a place where healing happens, not just in the exam rooms, but in homes just like this. We honor the founders, the volunteers, the donors, and the countless lives that have passed through the doors of this home. Their courage and faith and kindness are the foundation on which we continue to build. The city of Rochester stands proudly with you as you grow, not just in square footage, but in spirit and purpose and reach. May the next 40 years of Hands of Compassion, now I can say HOC, be filled with even more stories, and thank you for sharing that one, even more stories of healing, of comfort, and of community. Certainly what you're known for and what you're growing into. Congratulations on this incredible milestone today. Thank you so much for the invitation to my husband and I to be able to join you, and I look forward to the groundbreaking. Thank you so much.
Free throw, okay? 1, 2, 3, through! Very good. Thank you all.
Somebody feels hopeless, somebody despairs, somebody walks a path alone, watching others walk around in pairs. Somebody's in the street now, somebody's in doubt, somebody has no place to go, somebody cries out saying, Abba, Abba. Somebody is hungry, somebody's in pain, somebody sleeps alone in fear, somebody's in shame, somebody needs a friend to lean on, somebody's not there, somebody's looking at the end, somebody's in prayer and praying, Abba, Abba. Take me